In this video, I'm going to show how to make a screw top container using Tinkercad for 3D printing. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to come over here to the pull down list and you're going to go to shape generators down at the bottom. And the one that we want is this one, which is the isometric thread. So we're going to just click and drag this out to our workspace. And I always like to change my view to orthographic. That way you don't have that perspective issue when it's trying to draw things perspectively. All right, I'm going to set the diameter of this thread to 30. Now the pitch, you'll notice when you increase the pitch, that kind of separates the different loops of the thread. And so what we are going to do for a pitch is we are going to put it to 1. And let's kind of do a more sideways view. Segments, this is how it smooths those threads. So you want to jack that up as high as it can go to 32. And the number of rotations, that's going to be how many of these threads there are going to be. And so for our particular little container, we're going to have 3 rotations. Now the tip scale, let's zoom in. The tip scale is going to affect this tip right here. As you increase the tip scale, it becomes more and more square. And I want to keep that pointed. So we are going to have a tip scale of 0. Now the tip segments, that is going to just thin everything. And the higher that value, the harder it is to 3D print it because you need more supports. So we are going to keep the tip segments to 1. Now we're going to keep this one as the male. And when we make the hole that this is going to screw into, we're going to want that hole to be a little bigger. So in order to aid that, we are going to set our thread scale to 0.8. And that's going to make all these different threads a little bit skinnier. So now we're going to make our hole. So to make our hole, we are going to duplicate it. So I'm going to select it, do Control D to duplicate it, and I'm going to make it into a hole. Now we want our hole to be a little bit bigger than the other one. And so we're going to set that to 31 by 31. We're going to keep the height the same, but we're going to set the width and the length a little differently. We are going to select them both and we are going to center them. So I'm going to center them in the middle here and center them in the middle here. Now we're going to select our hole again. And how we're going to size this a little bigger so we have that tolerance when we 3D print so that they screw into each other easily. We are going to set the thread scale of our hole to 1. And so now if we look at it from the front and we zoom in, you can see we've got a really nice tolerance here all the way around. So now we need to make our container. So what we'll do, we're going to come back over to here and come back to basic shapes, and we'll drag in a cylinder. Want to jack up the sides as far as it can go so it has a smoother side. And you are going to want this to be a little wider than the threads. So the threads are 30 by 30. So we're going to set this to be 35 by 35. And we're going to keep the height at 20 millimeters. Now we're going to place our male threads on top of this, the easiest way to do that is to come over here, use the work plane tool, and drag that on top of our cylinder, which is going to be our base. Now we'll select our male threads and select a D, and that's going to place it right on top here. And to get rid of this temporary work plane, I'm just going to click and drag this out again. And we'll select both of these, and we are going to align them. So we're going to align them in the center this way and the center this way. And that didn't take. Center it this way. And let's zoom in a little bit. And then I'm going to further lower the male thread 1 millimeter down into this. So I've lowered that 1 millimeter in. Now for our lid, I'm going to go ahead and select the bottom here. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to keep all the same parameters except for the height. I'm going to change that to 5 millimeters. I'm going to make sure both of these are on the ground level. So I select them and press the D, and that makes sure everything is flat on the plane. Now I'm going to go ahead and align these up, center this way and center this way. And so now we have our hole in the bottom of our cap. I'm going to select them both, and I am going to group them. And so now we have our cap made. And also going to come over here, and I will group them. And we've almost got our bottom container made, except for we're going to want to drill a hole into it. So I'm going to bring a cylinder in that is a hole. We're going to set the sides again, jack it up as high as it can go. And I'm going to make sure that this is higher than, whoops, I didn't want to do that, undo, higher than my cylinder here. And how I'm going to want to size that, let's look at the top. I want it to be just shy of this inner circle right here. And so I am going to size this hole to try and guesstimate to be about in the center here. And my snap to grid is a little bit too much at 1 millimeter, so I'm going to change it to 0.1 millimeter. And I want to size this a little bit bigger. Okay, and I want to make sure that they're both the same. Let's try 28 by 28 and see how close that gets us. Let's go ahead and center it here, and center it here. And I'd like to have it just a little bit less, so let's set that to 27.5 and 27.5. I don't want it right at the edge of that. So let's center this again. Okay, that looks good. So that will give us a little bit of a lip for this first thread. Now the way it is, if I group this as it is, it's going to punch all the way through. And so what I want to do is I want to have a 2 millimeter bottom. So I'm going to select my hole and I'm going to raise it 2 millimeters. So I can just type in a 2 here. And now I can select everything. And now we've got the bottom of our base made. Now something I'm going to do is I'm going to check my lid. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to bring in a work plane right on that lip, and I'm going to bring my lid up to that level. We'll get rid of our temporary work plane, and let's center these two. Now what I want to do, I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to make the lid transparent. So I'm going to select the lid and type T to make it transparent. We'll center it on the front and zoom in. And what I need to do, let's raise this just a tad. That's too high. So you'll notice that the offset here is a little bit too much because we want it to be screw into here. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to ungroup these and ungroup this, and let's lower that. .8. So 0.1, that's in at 0.1. And then let's bring down our, okay, so I am going to raise my lid to be about where I'm going to want it when it screws in, to have maybe that much clearance. And so I am going to need, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower, let me go ahead and hide the lid. I am going to lower this a full 1 millimeter, and let's look at, okay, that's a little bit too much. Let's raise that up. Okay, so that looks good. That looks like we'll have good clearance, and that will put our lid almost touching the base here. And so we're just checking it. You know, if we had this come all the way up, then that would be too much. So about like that. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to hide my lid so that I can come in here and regroup all these. So when I display my lid, it looks like we've got pretty good tolerances here. So I'm going to head and move my lid. I'm going to drop it down to the plane, and I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. Because that makes it much easier to print. And so I'm going to print these, and we'll see how that turns out. All right, and here is our printed result. And you can just screw on the top, and it screws on nicely and has a nice snug fit. And it's a strong screw. It won't come off. And so I'd say that turned out pretty good. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. Bye.